Welcome to the Parenting Thoughts podcast with Andy and Christy Kirk, where we aim to unpack the emotional, spiritual, and practical elements around parenting. And we really want to get curious around topics. And so today we're going to get curious around parenting styles.
Parenting style.
Parenting styles. It is a fun one.
Yeah.
I'm sure this term parenting styles, it's a bit broad because I think that everyone thinks they're probably a style. Or I'm chilled, I'm good, I'm great, or I'm controlling, or we're going to dive into some specific ones. I mean, it was popularized really in a TV show, and a whole lot of different parenting styles were highlighted there. Did you see that show?
Yeah.
What were some of those styles?
Well, like the influencer, the team, like the stage parents, which is super fun. I think it was just... I don't know. I kind of watched on thinking, I'm doing better than what I feel like I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? Like it was quite nice to see so many different styles and realize that it's not just directive and organized and hot mess. Do you know what I mean? Like there's
two. I think,
I think
or
that's
good or not.
That's
good.
both of us. Like anyway. I'm the hot mess side. You're probably the director.
No, you're the creative. And we said on another podcast, making memories.
Yes.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think what was really good about the show is realizing like you're not in a box as well.
Right.
Like there's so many expressions of parenting.
Yeah.
And so many new ways and things to do and make it.
I like the show and I like because it did expose, as you said, multiple different ways of parenting. There is research around parenting styles, and I think that would be a good place to start on the podcast today. It's just to probably look at some of the research and look at some of the parenting styles that exist, how and what shapes that, and then dive in a little bit of, uncovering or getting curious with our listeners and those that are watching around what style or what they think they might be and areas of where God could move in and help guide that. So what are the traditional, I guess, off this particular study that you've looked at, 4 different styles?
The 4 different styles. So there's the permissive, the authoritative, the neglectful, and the authoritarian.
Right.
And I think it's really important to understand is that, like we said, there is the 4, like research has put it into these 4 topics. There's so many different elements of it, but it's understanding how you got to your parenting style. And that's really important, is that there is these 4 categories, but more so understanding like culture plays a part, religion plays a part, what you've seen in your family plays a part, what you've experienced, what you've read about plays a part in the way that you navigate your parenting style. There is these elements, but then there's reasons, probably why you fall into either one or multiple of them.
Let me help explain this a little bit. And those that are watching, you can watch a little bit as I use my hands here to explain certain things. If you're just listening on podcast, we're going to put an image in the show notes so you can look up what I'm talking about here. But the mental picture really would be looking at like 4 quadrants. Yeah. So dividing a page by 4, and you've got top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, and a line in between that would explain how you get there. So you go from left to right, warm and accepting on a scale across to cold and unaccepting. I mean, that's not a good description, but really that's what it is. Warm and accepting to cold and unaccepting. And then top to bottom would be really it's understanding at the bottom through to demanding. And so you've got understanding, demanding, warm and accepting to not accepting. And that is where you would land these 4 quadrants. So if you were, for instance, warm and accepting, but you were demanding, you're going to be authoritative. That's the style. But if you are cold and unaccepting and demanding also, that's an authoritarian. The bottom half would be if you're warm and accepting and understanding, then you're permissive. But if you're cold and unaccepting, but you're understanding in the bottom, it's neglectful. So they're the 4 different types that we want to have a look at right now. So let's start and just unpack these 4, traditional parenting styles And it doesn't mean that you're one, you know, and you're this. You might lean into it over different circumstances, different times. And as you said, it's your background, your past. But our hope today is we unpack this and we get curious around it. It might prod and poke at some areas that we could say, oh, maybe I could lean back that way a little bit more along the axis there. So can you explain these and dive into it, starting with, I guess, permissive?
Permissive, yeah. So permissive it is more so about like a child-driven parenting style. So it's, you know, there's a lot more freedom. I probably would say permissive is probably my end of the spectrum in the sense of like the warm and nurturing, freedom to explore and discover, but also like less guidelines and limited rules.
But understanding at the same time.
Yeah,
that's
but
what shapes that bottom left.
Yeah.
Okay.
So understanding that's that one. The authoritative is more so we're coming alongside our child, we're problem solving together, we're setting clear boundaries, there's expectations, but it's a discussion. So we're going to set the rules, but then why do we set these rules? What is the value that is behind that rule? What does that look like? And if you look at, they would say that one of the best ways to parent or that understanding of a good foundation is that authoritative parenting style, where it's like that's where a lot of parenting is going. The emotion coaching that we talked about, understanding what we've spoken about a lot too is being curious in your connection with your child. So it's building that. It's like not a partnership because there is still the adult and the child, but it's allowing them to have that input and ability to create, you know, understanding in that space.
Right.
Then
what happens, I was going to say, what happens then if you so people listening to this, I start out and I listen to some of them and I think, okay, sets clear rules and expectations. That's me, right?
Yeah.
But the open in discussion isn't quite so there. It's I'm now sliding back the other way, which is more authoritative.
Yeah.
So it's again neither right or wrong. It's even as we start to talk, it's highlighting that okay, for me right there, I want to set clear expectations. I want clear outcomes. But what I want is the understanding or to know the why behind the what, to include in the story. And I think that's probably our greatest strengths is bouncing off each other. And I've probably learnt that element from you. So when you're saying you're on that side, you know, permissive, you know, not giving or enforcing the rules, it's like, well, let's just explore this. I then have the rules and it's like, man, we're swinging, but finding somewhere in the middle there is where that healthy space sits really. The next one really is an authoritarian, which I mentioned. What does that look like?
So that's what like the strict, like these are the rules, like I'm in charge, kind of like children are seen and not heard in that, like that's kind of like a nasty way of saying it, but in the sense of like I'm calling the shots. It's like very
one way.
Yeah, just one way kind of traffic in that sense of the way of parenting. And then you've got the neglectful type. So it's the uninvolved, the absent parent, not much discussion, not a lot of, it's quite dismissive and not really noticing like your child's emotional, but like get over it, you'll be fine. Like that neglectful type way of dealing with your child.
As you explain that, I start to think through that society, current trends around technology, the way that parents are living their life, pushed to the margins with work, financial stress, some of these things would impact our parenting style because it may not be our intention to be neglectful. It may not be our intention to be an authoritarian and come to and drop the hammer, but we do because of what's going on with us. What would you say around that? Because really, it's not essentially all our nature. Some of it is our experience.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the main reasons why we parent in a certain way is because maybe we've been modelled it and we haven't had the awareness of it to change elements of it. But then definitely what you're saying about how technology has impacted parenting a lot in the sense of like it's not intentional, like you're saying, but it's more so what I would say in that sense is that what do you do when you're stressed? Because it's not that you're wanting to neglect, it's not that you're like necessarily like intentionally being on your phone to not manage your children. It's just more so that the stress level is so high, but the way that I am numbing it or the way that I am dealing with it right now is to be numb and to do something that is, I guess, either doom scrolling or whatever that looks like. So I think what it would be really understanding is that what are you doing when you're stressed? Because life has so many things that we're dealing with, like so many elements of life are so busy and chaotic at the moment. But what does it look like for you to reset, recharge, and to not be neglectful subconsciously, like you're saying?
I think as some parents listen to this, I know even for me sitting here running through some scenarios in my head, I'm thinking, man, I hear some of these descriptions and I think I don't want to be this, I don't want those attributes. And so I guess for us to know what we want to do or not want to do, getting curious, asking some questions around this is going to be really helpful. And so I've got some questions I'd really love to unpack together here with you now. But some questions might be, what values do I want my children to have when they grow up? You know, that's a great posing question. How does that one shape and lean us to maybe slide on the scale on one of these?
Well, I love this one because I work with a lot of children in schools, outside schools, like with private clients as well. And like a lot of parents will bring their child to me and like, oh, you know, this is going on, this isn't working the way that they want, or they need help with this. But oftentimes I sit with the child and I say to them, what are your family values? And most of the parents would be able to say, these are our family values. But with the kids, they're like, I have no idea, like what our family values are. What are the things that, what do we prioritize as a family? What means a lot to our family? And so I love this question because oftentimes there's the assumption that children even know what family values are or what the values are in their home. And so I think it would be like having that conversation with your children. One of the things that I encourage a lot of parents to do is to sit down and have the discussion, like what is important to us? Why? And then not only that, if it's kindness, for example, what does that even look like? You know, what does that look like as a parent? What does it look like as a child? What does it look like in our community? And just really breaking it down and understanding what are values, why are they important?
It's a great point you raised there, because in a recent One Hope research paper called Family Matters, it said that asking of parents what's one of the most important things to pass on to your children, faith and values came in at 7th, like very low, less than 10% of parents worldwide saw that it was important to pass on faith and values. But yet when you sit at some of the challenges that you're describing and now it's there's problems in the home, a connection with the parent, behaviour that's a certain way, anxiety or whatever it might be, that's causing some challenges in the individual, you have just said, you asked the question, what are the values? What do you base this on? What is life fixed on and based on? And as parents globally, they're saying, well, passing on, I want my child to be successful. I want my children to understand their identity. These are all things that ranked high, but yet it's based out of the faith and based out of the values. And so that's a great starting point that you raise right there.
Yeah, it's such a funny one too, because when I sit down with kids and I ask them what like their family values are, and they're like, oh, I don't know. And then so I would look at like, okay, what does your family value by your observation? So like your dad or caregiver or, you know, whoever's in your home, like what do they value? And they'll often tell you like their phone, or do you know what I mean? So it's like kids are very observant and they're going to model what they see. So I think it's really understanding, like having that conversation is so important, because not only does it help the children to understand what the family values are, it helps us as parents to realign to what's important and like what are my kids seeing that they think is valuable to us, and how do I actually need to realign my language, my behavior, my character, and all of those things to bring back into alignment what actually our family values are.
It's so true. I guess the overarching question you're asking there, and one we can dive in now, and our listeners and those that are watching can ask, is what type of parent do I want to be? So even gauge off those 4, what type do I choose? What would I want? I mean, for me, it's like I sort of want to be, I obviously don't want to be neglecting, but I want to be a bit of a balance where I can listen. And I think you were saying then that, okay, where a lot of it's going to is that authoritative. If parents are asking themselves that question, what should they be asking? What should they be looking at there? What sort of parent do I want to be?
Yeah, I think it comes back to like the gifts, you know, like we work well because you're really good at organization, and that's super helpful for a home. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's important to you, and it's important because it teaches value of, you know, time, possessions, all of those things. But I think it's just understanding your personality as well. So like, I'm probably like a joy-filled, wonder-filled person, but there's also elements like if I just lived in that world, a lot of stuff wouldn't function. So
Really?
I think, I think when you say that, it's really understanding like what kind of parent do I want to be. I think for me, it's like the fruit of the spirit. Like God gives us a very clear example of, you know, the ways to live, love, joy, peace, and patience. Like we talked about that in one of the other podcasts, and it's just coming back to that alignment of, if I don't deal with some of my stuff or identify some of my reasons why I parent, then I'm probably going to just subconsciously take a pathway that maybe isn't in alignment to a faith-based foundation of parenting as well.
I like that. And I think when we're talking about parenting, and we know that people that are listening and watching, there's a broad range of what the family makeup looks like today, what the modern family looks like. And so there would be single parents, there would be parents here who have grandparents co-parenting. And so, you know, who is the primary caregiver to the child matters, because it is, okay, in our circumstance, husband and wife being in a home, we've got to understand what you bring, but we have to actually have conversations as to, okay, what I don't want you to bring into this part. And that's confronting. That's us having honest conversations about, okay, that authoritative side actually needs to go back on the scale a little bit. And so I think, how do caregivers in a home, whether it's parents together or grandparents or whoever might be there as primary caregivers, how can they embark on that honest conversation to emphasize your strengths? Because you've said it there. I highly value the creative, the loving, the joy, the filled wonder that you bring. But you're right. The washing does not get done at that point. But on the functional who needs clothes? Clean clothes. But on the functional practical side that we're talking about right now, if we just live in that way all the time, we're robots. It's militant. It's boring. And I can acknowledge that. So how do you have that honest conversation?
I think it's valuing the gift that the other person has and encouraging that. But it's also having that conversation where you're not defensive as well, and going, okay, as caregivers, as parents, this is what I want to be. These are my strengths. Like, I think it's firstly identifying what your strengths are, and then identifying where your challenges are, and realizing that for us to deal with our challenges is to either bring someone into it, to learn, to research, to not bring shame to it, because I think that can happen, like, you know, like, that's annoying. Like it's like you're putting shame on the other person for the way that they parent. No, there's reasons why they've learnt to parent that way. There needs to be that space of grace and understanding to be able to learn and develop and grow through that, and go on the journey together. You know what I mean? So rather than putting shame on it, go, okay, like this could work better this way. Let's do it together. Like let's figure it out together.
One thing I really appreciate is that I would early in our marriage, and we'd had little kids, I played rugby and I travelled, and then even as I went into ministry, I would start to travel, and so when I would travel and I would go away, there would be an element, whether it would be emotionally inside of me, that I would, whether it's subconsciously, feel bad that I haven't been there to contribute, or I'd be coming home, whatever it would be, that I would come home and try and control. And so you'd come back in and try and control that environment of control, whether it be washing. I have to always have my bag unpacked and put away if I travel, and just that's my quirks. They're my what makes me me. But you would learn, okay, if this is going to release the pressure and the stress, when he would come home, I would make sure that certain things were in order. I guess what I'm talking about there are just different stresses in the other partner, the other caregiver there. I love that you spoke about, okay, acknowledge the gifts and encourage the gifts, but it's also acknowledging the stresses
Yeah,
as well.
definitely.
I
Yeah.
know for you that it sounds funny, but almost the reverse. If I'm going to come and be like, right, we're going to do this, this, and this. It's like, it's been a big week. There needs to be time to unwind. We need to get out. We need to go the outdoors, go to the beach, walk along the sand. Elements that instantly de-stress you, that I'm helping you be a greater version and parent. So as we co-parent, I want you to win. I want my kids to love you and think you're the greatest parent in the world. But if I'm adding those stresses on you, then all of a sudden you're swinging back the other side and being, whether it's neglectful or authoritative or whatever it might be. So I think it's as equal as identifying the gifts, it's identifying the stresses. What would you say?
I think that's so true, because I think it's you parent in a way because of that control inside of yourself, realistically, and that sense of understanding, like that you need to know that narrative. And sometimes when you're in that, it's subconscious and you're acting a certain way. It's the love and the kindness of the other person, or even like if you're a solo parent, the love and the kindness towards yourself, of the acknowledgement of what you've been through, what you're walking through, what are the stresses in your world. You're not going to get that right every time, because whatever's in front of you, you want to deal with right there and then. But I think it's taking that step back and just going, okay, what are all the plates spinning? Because there's a lot of plates spinning.
Right.
And how can I show kindness? How can I show compassion to myself and to the other person? But how can I also acknowledge, like, it's a lot. Like, there's a lot of stuff, and like you're doing life and marriage or relationship or working and all of that on top of parenting. So I think it's just being really kind towards each other and understanding what stresses the other person, acknowledging what stress they have on their plate at that moment.
Yeah.
And one thing that we've started doing, it's funny because you could have done it a long time ago. But anyway, we've started doing, like, do you need comfort or a solution? And I think sometimes it's just like right now, like, do we need a solution to figure out what's for dinner, which happens for us most days at like 3:30. But like, it's understanding, like, do we need a solution in this moment or do we need comfort? And it's not only just asking that for the other person, but what do I need right now? Do I need a solution? How can I make a plan? But how can I comfort myself? Do I need that right now?
Which is brilliant for the kids as well, because kids are going to come to us and it's that moment of, do they want comfort or do they want a solution? Because you're all comfort and I'm all solutions. But and that can be hard, because it'll be the kids come and they just want a hug, and I've gone into a 5-step plan as what they can do, or with you, or they're like, no, I actually need some practical advice right now. And we're just like, there, off you run. Whether to each other or the kids. But I think that's so true. Do you want comfort or want solution? I think really helped. I was going to ask what tools help me, the parent, in a more consistent way when it really comes to not defaulting back to old habits or bad habits, but being proactive in saying, right, I intentionally want to be this parent, because I think that whether it's tired or the outside circumstances which we've spoken about, we can fall into that default, but maybe the default's not healthy. So I want to be proactive in doing this. So what are some strategies that parents can do to really help them be proactive in being their best?
Well, I think I spoke about it in one of the other podcasts, is identifying the patterns and the themes. So what are the patterns in my family or my experience that I don't want to repeat? What are the themes in my family or like my experiences or trauma that I don't want to repeat? And I think to have awareness of it is sometimes to write those things down and then write an alternative to that, or write a boundary around that, or write a limit around that to help you to grow and develop in that, or to remove those types of things. And I think also accountability. I think one of the best things I've probably done in parenting is found somebody who's 10 years before me, who has got, like, they've got adult kids now, and just learning and leaning and gleaning off them and helping develop who I want to be. I think sometimes this is the best thing you do, like talking about the kind of parent that you want to be. Like, find someone in your world that's an epic parent, or find someone in a world that you align with or you can resonate with, and sit with them and glean from them and see what worked, what didn't work, like what they learnt about themselves, like what they had to forgive themselves for, like if you want to be a certain parent, then there's that intentionality, because if it's subconscious, it will be repeated. So when you bring awareness to it and you find a different way, then you can actually take steps towards that.
That's brilliant. And I know for those that are obviously watching and listening, you're taking proactive steps to lean into growth around parenting. And so thank you for joining us on the podcast each month. And even as you're saying, Christy, finding that person that is really going to help shape and help you go to that next step. Those 4 areas, again, we're going to put some notes in that will be able to help you in the image to show you the different scales of how to get there. But that permissive, authoritative, neglectful and authoritarian, and really those questions of asking of what type of parent do I want to be and how am I going to get there is so important. I know for us, our parenting is based of faith-based parenting. So a Christian faith is what we live. And so next month on the podcast, we're going to talk really about how we can live that intentional faith-based parenting. And so I look forward to getting curious and chatting through that with you next month.
Awesome.
This is a Poly Studios production.